Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Anita Vitikongolo from Romance Languages, and I am a member of the course cluster Studies in Beauty that is organizing this talk. Thank you all, members of the Brunswick and the Bowdoin communities, for being here. I also want to thank the Dean of Academic Affairs for funding this talk through the generous Andrew Mellon Foundation Fund. And last but not least, I want to thank my students from the course Aesthetics in Africa, Europe, and the Caribbean, who've given me the opportunity to expand the course through and thanks to this talk. I want to recognize them by naming them Mariana, Noël, Jada, Phoebe, Aviva, Marnie, and Sophia. It's a pleasure to be having you all for this talk by Dr. Noliwe Rooks on the role played by Black women in the International Dove Real Beauty campaign and how the latter used feminism to advertise the products. Please note that Dr. Rooks will be most pleased to discuss further with you after the talk through a question and answer period. Dr. Rooks is Associate Professor in Africana Studies and Feminist, Gender, Sexuality Studies at Cornell University, where she also is the Director of Graduate Studies in Africana Studies. She is an interdisciplinary scholar whose work explores the racial implications of beauty, fashion, and adornment, as well as the way race and gender both impact and are impacted by popular culture, social history, and political life in the United States. Dr. Rooks is the author of 3 books, the first of which, Hair Raising, Beauty, Culture, and African American Women, won both the 1997 Choice Award for Outstanding Academic Book and the Public Library Association's 1997 Award for Outstanding University Press Book. Her second book, Ladies' Pages, African American Women's Magazines, and the Culture That Made Them, was published in 2004. Her most recent book, White Money, Black Power, African American Studies and the Crisis of Race in Higher Education, was published in 2006 with Beacon Press. She has 2 forthcoming edited collections, Black Fashion, Gender, Art, Politics, a special issue of NKA, Journal of Contemporary Art, with Duke University Press. That is upcoming in 2015. And the second one, Women and Magazines in the 21st Century, Race, White Writing, and New Media, that is under consideration. Her current book project is about the politics of race and economics of K-12 education in the United States, and tentatively titled Apartheid in America and Why It Matters That We Have Reached the Beginning of the End of Public Education. As I said earlier, tonight she will tell us more about Black women, beauty, the cosmetic industry, and the media in the talk she entitled, Because What is Beautiful is Good, Erasing Race and Selling Feminism in the Dove Campaign for Real Beauty. Please help me welcome her to the floor. Thank you.
Thank y'all. I'm told that I have to speak into the conveyance. Yes, I'm good? Yeah? Because people are watching somewhere that we can't see. They can see us. Thank you so much for coming. I know that unless Bowdoin is very, very extremely different from Cornell, y'all have a bunch of things pulling at you right now. You had a lot of options, sleep being one of them, that you could have engaged in. So I appreciate you coming out. I am going to, am I going to jump right into it? Well, of course, I want to thank Anita. I want to hear more about the class that y'all are in. It sounds fabulous. I teach a class called Fashioning Race. No. It's modeling and race, and there's fashion and model in there now. Gendering, modeling, fashioning, race. There you go. That has to do with a lot of contemporary changes around gender in the fashion industry right now, as well as ways that we do and do not think about fashion in the diaspora, in the African diaspora, in the relationship of all kinds of stuff like workplace practices to the clothes that we wear, as well as how cute some people are, right? So I'd love to, but it's much more sort of US based, so I really would love to talk with y'all some more, learn some things, broaden my experience. So this talk today is actually part of a larger project that I put down, pick up, put down, pick up. It's not on the front burner, which means that I'm always also happy for feedback, because I'm still thinking it. Right? I'm still trying to get it right. What the larger project is about, though, is how the terms Black, female, and intellectual, right? Just those terms, Black, female, and intellectual, are impacted by representations in popular culture. This particular piece of that project looks at beauty and what happens when within the construct of the first Dove Beauty campaign, begun almost 11 years ago, and called the Dove Campaign for Real Beauty. Within it, Black women's bodies are used to market products to consumers who are not Black in a cultural moment where Blackness is still often overlooked, degraded, and or the marker of Blackness or race is often reacted to as if it is frightening to others. I end with a discussion. It's really quick moving. I know it says I'm doing a lot of things, quick moving. I'm gonna end with a discussion of how and why Black women are positioned in the Dove Beauty campaign matters beyond the pages of a magazine or a television commercial, with a look at a piece of art produced by a young woman who was then a high school student. Overall, oh yeah, we're supposed to be on the second slide. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna keep up now. Overall, the paper is gonna argue that a focus on beauty in general, and this evolving campaign in particular, is an example of why we need to think about the mechanics, power, and purpose of media, beyond just discussing how it empowers, uplifts, and entertains. There's often a message within it that's designed to do more than just that. In general, and by way of context, I think that popular culture matters. I think race matters too. And a variety of scholars have shown media representations have directly and forcefully impacted policy implementation and prescriptions for people of color. The areas of highest impact, the ways that media most often actually ends up impacting policy, public policy, governance, has to do with issues around public health, policing, prison sentencing, and education reform. What that scholarship makes clear is that within the mediated realm of the popular, not the peer-reviewed realms of the academy, far too many policymakers get their foundational ideas about the Black and Latino people most impacted by their media viewing habits. Within that context, for Black women, beauty is about much more than aesthetics or a beholder's eye, and the attention paid to it is about more than vanity. However, outside of American studies, beauty and race as meaningful constructs are understudied. Some scholars study beauty, others study race, but few look at both in relation to each other. This is especially true for how ideas about beauty impact the lived realities of Black people. So that's why I think how we, as well as companies and our culture, talk about beauty matters. In order to explain how it matters in this particular moment, in this particular campaign, I want to start in the present and work my way back 11 years. In order to do that, I'm going to, in a sense, begin at the end and look at one of the latest iterations of the wildly successful campaign called Real Beauty Sketches. As part of an overall campaign that's widely acknowledged to be one of the most successful in history, the Real Beauty campaign. Since I'm going to spend quite a bit of time talking about where all this began, this short film will give you a sense of where we are now, and I'm sure most of y'all have seen this. But it's only 2.5 or 3 minutes, so.
I always thought people were so cute when they have the little cheeks and they're like rosy, but mine are pretty plain. If I was gonna change one feature about my face, I would say that I would want fuller lips.
I'm definitely a person that looks tired when I'm tired, and when people say that, I immediately am like, oh man. I'm starting to already get little crow's feet and stuff, which like my mom has, so yeah.
I'm a forensic artist. I was trained at the FBI Academy in 1993 in composite art. Worked for the San Jose Police Department as the police artist from 1995 to 2011.
We didn't really know what we were doing, so that was nerve-wracking for everyone.
I showed up to a place I'd never been and walked into this big warehouse, and at the very end there was a guy with his back to me with a drafting board.
I had a curtain separating me so that I don't see him. We'll begin. First of all, tell me about your hair.
Brown, long, I guess a little bit past my shoulders.
Your jaw.
My mom told me I had a big jaw. Yeah, they're brown eyebrows, dark brown eyebrows.
Okay.
I didn't know what he was doing, but then I could tell after several questions that he was drawing me.
Tell me about your chin.
I guess I haven't really compared it to anyone else's chin, but especially when like I smile, I just feel like it kind of protrudes a little bit.
What would be your most prominent feature?
I kind of have a fat, rounder face.
The older I've gotten, the more freckles I've gotten.
You sort of realize, oh man, now I have to talk about myself and think about my looks.
I'm 40, so I'm starting to get a little bit of the crow's feet thing going on.
Once I get a sketch, I say thank you very much, and then they leave. I don't see them.
I still didn't know. All I had been told before the sketch was to get friendly with this other woman, Chloe.
Today I'm going to ask you some questions about a person you met earlier, and I'm going to ask you some general questions about their face.
She was thin, so you could see her cheekbones. And her chin was a nice, thin chin.
The women were really critical about moles or scars or things like that, and yet they were describing just a normal, beautiful person.
She had nice eyes. They lit up when she spoke and were very expressive.
The length of the nose, what is that like?
Short.
Short.
Yeah, cute nose.
Her face was fairly thin.
She had blue eyes, very nice blue eyes.
Okay.
It's almost over.
So here we are. So this is your self-described image? And then somebody else described you in light of this sketch.
This whole thing about having dark circles and crow's feet around my eyes, and that was not part of the sketch at all that the stranger did. The stranger's was a little more like gentle.
That's pretty different. Which is very strange.
She looks closed off and fatter. She just looks kind of shut down. Sadder, too.
The second one is more beautiful.
I think they're catching more of that from you?
Yeah. She looks more open and friendly and happy. I've come a long way in how I see myself, but I think I still have some way to go.
I have some work to do on myself.
Do you think...
Okay, I'm gonna stop it there. It goes on, right? Everybody looks at it. You can imagine where we, it's emotional. And no one has described themselves in a way that's sort of more attractive, with air quotes, than the way a stranger described them, right? So you get the point. If I was in class, I'd make y'all start unpacking this. But since my whole talk is actually going to be about, is it still on? Oh. Since my whole talk is actually going to unpack some of it, you're free for the time being. This thing was hugely popular, hugely successful. Just this. The entire campaign has been record-breaking. There's never been an advertising campaign in the Real Beauty thing is 11 years old now. There's never been another campaign that has cultivated more consumers globally than has this one. And within that, this last iteration of the Dove Real Beauty sketches is awe-inspiring. People all over the advertising world are trying to figure out how to reproduce it. Just 1 month after it was released, it garnered more than 114 million total online views, making it the most viral ad video of all time. It was uploaded in 25 languages and has been viewed in 110 different countries. It's no accident that the video went viral. It was designed to do that. David Waterhouse, the global head of content and PR at a company called Unruly Media that tracks viral media, said, quote, "I think what made this campaign perform particularly strongly is that the content, which elicited the intense emotional responses of warmth, happiness, and knowledge from women, its target demographic." He also pointed out that a video really soars when consumers don't just want to watch it on YouTube, but they want to share it with their friends. In this case, this video was shared 3.74 million times, which makes it the third most shared video of all time. It was a cultural phenomena that spoke primarily to women, and it was popular and profitable at the same time. It did all of that while telling women they should actually feel good about who they are, that beauty is internal and personal, and race neutral and individual, and should not have power in women's lives. Many of us, many women, fatigued with hearing the opposite and seeing the opposite, desperately wanted to believe that all of this is true. The problem is, in the past 30 years, one research project after the other has made clear that beauty is far more than an individual issue. There are societal, economic, and policy implications tied to who we believe to be beautiful. Furthermore, it's clear that such bias is pervasive, and that most people underestimate the extent to which their belief that someone is attractive impacts their ability to fairly evaluate accomplishments. One such study makes clear that rewards for beauty begin very early, and along with it, the lessons we learn and teach about it. Parents and teachers give less attention to infants and children that aren't generally accepted as attractive. Those children not described as attractive, are less likely to be described as good, smart, likable, and academically gifted. Children quickly internalize these judgments, and they then begin to ascribe more desirable character traits to good-looking individuals and prefer to have them as friends. In these studies, Black children are consistently found to be part of the group considered less attractive, upwards of 60% of the time. This intertwining of race and appearance persists throughout adult life. A wide array of research documents a phenomena that psychologists describe as what is beautiful is good. According to scholars such as Deborah Rhodes, whose quote began this talk, less attractive individuals are less likely to be viewed as smart, happy, interesting, likable, successful, or well-adjusted. They're less likely to marry, and if they do, they're less likely to marry someone wealthy. Surveyed college students would prefer a spouse who is an embezzler, drug user, or shoplifter, as opposed to someone who is obese. Not only are the less attractive treated worse, such treatment erodes self-esteem and social skills, which compounds these disadvantages. Appearance also skews judgments about competence and job performance. In studies where subjects evaluate written essays, the same material receives lower ratings for ideas and creativity when an accompanying photograph shows an author the reviewer believes to be less than attractive. Resumes get a more favorable assessment when they're thought to belong to more attractive individuals. And in a field closer to home, good-looking faculty receive better course evaluations from students, and good-looking students are more likely to receive higher grades from professors, bearing no relationship to Bowdoin, I'm sure. On the whole, less attractive individuals are less likely to be hired and promoted, and they earn lower salaries despite the absence of any differences in cognitive ability. It shouldn't surprise any of us that beauty is understood similarly across differences of race, age, and income, which means that by and large, excluding family relationships, we all share basic ideas about what constitutes the beautiful. I feel the need to say, though, what's unattractive is very different, right? So while there's all kinds of agreement in groups around who could be beautiful, what is beauty, what beautiful looks like, there's far more disagreement when you get to what's unattractive. That messy middle, there's all kinds of factors that impact it. However, what I find interesting is that those factors don't make that much difference around something we consider just objectively beautiful. Nonetheless, an identifiably black woman, a dark-skinned black woman, is considered less attractive or unattractive 50% of the time. This is less true the more ethnically vague or fair-skinned a black woman appears to be. As a result, perceptions about beauty reach beyond the individual mirror and from a very early age begin to impact how popular, employed, and wealthy one will be. In short, ideas about beauty and the beautiful are highly raced, though they certainly move beyond the stereotypical blonde-haired, blue-eyed standard. If black women who are readily identifiable as primarily of African descent generally fall on the lower end of the beauty spectrum, it would seem that a beauty campaign aimed at enlarging definitions of beauty will be a perfect vehicle to not just reform, but to revolutionize those perceptions worldwide and in relation to black women. It is then significant that the Dove campaign for real beauty that ran from 2004 to 2011 both begins and ends with images of black women. However, the meaning, impact, and significance of each could not have been more different. If the first, the opening image, offered hope that black women could one day look in the mirror and declare themselves pretty enough just as they are, the second reinforces the 2011 image, reinforces and legitimizes understandings that pretty necessarily resides outside of black female bodies. In order to understand how we got there, I'm going to go through two different creation stories for how the Dove campaign for real beauty began. What both stories acknowledge is that it was begun to help trigger a societal change and an expansion of the definition and discussion of beauty. A worldwide marketing campaign that first began in Great Britain, it was created in partnership with marketing and communications agencies, including Ogilvy and Mather, the oldest and most respected advertising agency in the world. So there's these two stories. The first one is actually really easy to get to. The first story, I see all over the place. The second story took a little unearthing. Actually, on my students' part, let me say. One of my students in a class actually started pulling a thread that led to the second story. So in the first story of how the campaign began, what you see repeatedly is that the idea was hatched during a strategy meeting with a largely female client team trying to convey to their male colleagues the frustration that women feel when confronted with most beauty advertising. The team had been interviewing women to find out how they feel about beauty and the way they're portrayed in the media to determine how best to market Dove's product line. As one of the account managers, Olivia Johnson, recalled, we knew the way beauty brands behaved and the way they portrayed women wasn't quite right. The team's intuitive sense was that it made them feel a bit demoralized, a bit miserable. It makes you feel deflated when you see, this is still this woman talking, when you see the gap between these images of perfection and your own physical reality. According to this first version of the story, the team then went on to have a series of chats with feminist scholars and activists, such as Naomi Wolf and Gloria Steinem, who confirmed their suspicions that they should create advertising that challenged conventional stereotypes of beauty. But getting the men on board at the agency was a bit more difficult. The male creative director was said to be skeptical of the strategy at first, until talking to his wife one night, she said to him, quote, imagine thinking every day that your penis, she used a different word, isn't big enough. Men just aren't surrounded by images that make them feel that deeply insecure. In short, this first story would lead people to believe that the female marketing team came up with the idea for the campaign while sitting around chatting with each other and a few celebrity scholars, and by convincing the creative director of their advertising agency that his genitals had something to do with the process. There is, however, another story. In that one, the campaign was highly researched and constructed, and based on information found in a global study the agency commissioned called The Real Truth About Beauty, a Global Report. It was co-authored by Drs. Nancy Etkoff, a professor at Harvard University and author of a book called Survival of the Prettiest, and Dr. Susie Orbach, author of Fat is a Feminist Issue. So in the one story that you constantly see, these women who are ad agencies are just sort of talking with their friends, just sort of wandering around talking with their friends, and they say, you know, there's something here. In the second story, they actually go and pay professors like to conduct a global study to actually get some data, and they base the campaign on that, not on the anecdotal. I just find it interesting that they went to some links to kind of submerge the real basis, because I think it's kind of hot that they went and got professors to shape a campaign. Though Black women would figure prominently in the campaign, no scholars attentive to African American history or culture were included in the initial brain trust, nor were any consulted. The study used quantitative data collected from an international study of 3,200 women from 10 different countries. Through the study, Dove aimed to explore the relationship women have with beauty, determine how women define beauty, and learn the level of impact beauty has on their well-being. Through two key findings of the study, Dove was able to validate that the narrow definition of beauty has a significant impact on the self-esteem of women who were interviewed. The two findings were the 2% felt beautiful, and 81% of women in the US saw beauty in media as a problem. In addition to these statistics, the study found that only 5% of women felt comfortable describing themselves as pretty, and 9% felt comfortable describing, only 9% felt comfortable describing themselves as attractive. The study asked women about a wide range of issues regarding the mass media and popular culture. From all countries, cultures, ages, ethnicities, and races, the women felt that there was a narrow definition of beauty. Specifically, 76% wished female beauty would be portrayed in the media as more than just physical, and 75% wished the media did a better job of portraying women of diverse physical attractiveness, including age, shape, and size. Significantly, race was not mentioned as a category where definitions needed to be broadened. Based on the information found in that first study, the campaign that launched in September of 2004 began with 97-year-old Irene Sinclair, a great-grandmother from London who's also Black, though the only place I ever saw her race mentioned was in a published interview with a casting agent who chose her for the campaign. Toward that end, and in keeping with the findings of the research study, her image was used primarily to make clear that beauty could come in an older body. But she was not an example of how to include Black women in the category of the beautiful. Her picture appeared on a billboard in Times Square, in addition to posters throughout Australia, Canada, and the UK, and in Vogue, Flair, and Glamour, among other magazines. When interviewed, Irene made clear that her age and not her race was most important in the campaign in her remarks by explaining why she wanted to participate. She said she wanted to be a, quote, ambassador for older people, to affirm that we have a lot to offer, that we aren't past it. I've never been beautiful, but at least I feel I am beautiful now, end quote. A year later, Dove conducted a second study called Beyond Stereotypes, Rebuilding the Foundation of Beauty Beliefs, that collected information from 3,300 girls and women between the ages of 15 and 64 from 10 different countries. The study showed that of the women and girls surveyed, 90% wanted to change at least one aspect of their physical appearance, with body weight ranking the highest. In 2006, Dove conducted yet another global report called Beauty Comes of Age. This study surveyed 1,400 women between the ages of 50 and 64 from 9 different countries and found that 91% felt the media and advertising needed to do a better job of representing realistic images of women over 50. Armed with the information from these various studies, collected over a number of years, the agency constructed a number of campaigns aimed at correcting what women around the world told them was lacking in advertising about beauty. The second phase of the campaign launched in 2005 with print and outdoor advertisements that featured 6 everyday normal women who had, normals in quotes, who had real bodies and curves, in which the company now refers to as iconic. The campaign featured women who had been recruited in a number of ways. One was approached in the street, another answered an ad placed in a newspaper. The images were shot by the British portrait fashion photographer Rankin, who's made a career out of subverting fashion photography, and who has also produced several books of nudes featuring ordinary-looking people. Oprah covered the story of the campaign, and so did the Today Show. Dove's campaign, wrote Advertising Age, quote, undermines the basic proposition of decades of beauty care advertising by telling women and young girls they're beautiful just as they are. In February 2007, the third phase of the campaign was introduced. You know, this is from a German publication, and I actually have never found it any place except in the one German publication. So this particular image that Annie Leibovitz actually took, which I'm going to talk to you about, I just wanted to tell you, somehow it certainly has not circulated in the US, let me say. I have not been able to find it in Great Britain either, but it was in Germany. So this is the third phase of the campaign, using advertisements that targeted women 50 years and older. Annie Leibovitz, a world-renowned photographer, was the artist behind the print and television advertisements, which celebrated the beauty in older women. However, not everyone found the campaigns to be positive. For example, a number of billboards and advertisements asked viewers to phone Dove to vote on whether a woman on the billboard was fat or fab, for example. The results were posted real time on the billboard and made available on the website. While a photo in the October 25th, 2004 issue of Marketing Magazine shows fab leading fat 51 to 49% this is not actually, I don't have that one, but these are all the voting ads that they had, so I don't have that exact fat one. We have Fab Fit which I feel like they changed at some point. But while a photo in October 25th, 2004 showed Fab leading Fat 51 to 49, eventually the percentage of Fat votes overtook Fab, much to the dismay of the advertising agency, which quickly dismantled the site and access to the results. At the same time, by 2006, media publications and online sites began to wonder just how possible it was to show that many supposed normal women who had no cellulite, pot bellies, or any significant imperfections to speak of. The campaign also frequently drew criticism from feminist bloggers concerned about a campaign asking the public to vote on women's bodies and physical attributes. And in an instance of true irony, organized groups of bulimics and anorexics took to the discussion boards on the company's website to declare curves disgusting, fat offensive, and themselves as real women too. By October of 2005, the FCC reported that they had received several thousand complaints from viewers who disagreed with the images. Some of the complaints alleged that the images were lewd, disturbing, and offensive. By 2006, public opinion polls showed that 67% of viewers found the campaign distasteful, with 8 out of 10 males in the 28 to 45 age demographic finding the ads offensive. Nonetheless, the campaign is estimated to have increased worldwide sales by between 60 million and 70 million, and advertisers declared it an unqualified success. It is then all the more puzzling that a campaign so attentive to changing the dialogue about beauty would end with a view of Black women in beauty that was at least a century old. In May 2011, the internet exploded with cries of racism when this ad appeared. The Huffington Post, feministing racialicious, and a whole host of blog sites pointedly argue that if it was intentional or not, the ad suggested that this product would first turn a Black woman into a Latina before she would become white. The company quickly clarified that the ad was intended to illustrate the benefits of using the product that would make all types of skin more beautiful in just 1 week. As was true with their earlier advertisement, including women of color, race was not supposed to be a part of the visual narrative. Following this misstep, Unilever, the parent company for Dove products, announced the end of the Dove Real Beauty campaign, saying they wanted to replace the campaign with something less preachy. The new campaign, it was announced, would move away from focusing on body image and move toward helping women feel confident through the use of fun messaging, which is where we began, that's where we are now. For all the good it wanted to do at its beginning, the demise of the overall campaign was especially telling in regard to its desire, indeed insistence, on disconnecting the meaning of beauty from race, history, and scholars and scholarship about both. Indeed, because the company worked so closely with psychologists, historians, and sociologists in crafting their overall campaign, it's puzzling that they'd not catch something so simple as an advertisement where a large-boned Black woman became white and thin after using their product. I'm not sure if James Baldwin is still right, but at the very least, it would seem that if intentional or not, the company was calling on the exact cultural understandings found in their research that made clear that we tend to view white skin as inherently more beautiful than non-white skin, and thinner bodies as more beautiful than larger ones. Given that the campaign never gave any thought to broadening the category of beauty to include different races, nor did it pay attention to how we read and understand bodies that are raced, they used Black women's bodies to only denote the ability to overcome a variety of imperfections: flat chest, old, fat. By the end of the campaign, Black skin became another imperfection to be overcome or washed away. This is a particularly meaningful use of Black women's bodies, as in this moment, more and more images of Black women and girls are appearing in popular culture. For the members of the advertising agency's creative team, just a little bit of research into beauty for Black women, or a quick Google for works that look at race and beauty would surely have helped to avoid public embarrassment. It might have, for example, brought them to an insightful melding of the scholarly in relation to the popular and the cultural in relation to public policy, found in an award-winning documentary that I'm not going to show you because I've taken too much time, but I'm going to ask you to look up, you may have seen it, it's called A Girl Like Me. It's a little 7-minute short. It's available on YouTube and Vimeo. At the time that it was done, in 2006, it was the writer-director was a 17-year-old high school student who was in a project that HBO had sponsored, trying to find some new voices and to give them skills. And so she did a short film, like I said, 7 minutes. The first half is her interviewing friends about where they learned their messages about beauty. And the disturbing thing is that most of them are of African or Caribbean descent in Brooklyn, and where they learned to think about their skin and their hair had to do with their families, with their parents, with their aunts, with their mothers, and it was not always positive. These mothers did not always, and the African American people, they're just overwhelmingly of Caribbean and African descent. The mothers did not want them to have natural hair. The mothers wanted them to soak in bleach, literally soak in bleach as a skin lightening technique. And for all the conversations that we have about external images, one of the reasons those external images matter is because in individual homes, those messages are getting through, and another generation is being taught them at home. So if you change the ads, you still got to do some work elsewhere. So I wanted you to see it for that, and also she reenacts the Kenneth and Mamie Clark doll study in Harlem in 2006, and there's similar kinds of results where a majority of the children think that the good doll is white and the bad black doll is black. So I don't have time to go through it, but I invite you because it's free, available for download, and anytime you can support an artist of color, a woman artist, at whatever stage of life, I would invite you to do so. So that's what I have for you. Thank you. So hopefully, I promise to keep answers to questions short. If you have some you want to chat about.
Thank you. So first, thank you. And thanks for having the courage to approach such a topic when it's not easy, especially being a woman of color. It's not easy to kind of speak from an academic and a personal experience. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
My question is, back in the first ad campaign you showed us where the women gave a description of themselves. So racism was at play there, and I could see it and understand it, but what would we have done with that campaign had those women showed up and lauded themselves as beautiful? What would patriarchy have done with that? If they had showed up and said, well, I look great, my hair's on point, I have gorgeous eyes, my lips are full and awesome. What place does self-deprecation have in the narrative that is being a woman in America? If you show up and you're too confident, what then happens to you? Right. So, well, one thing, of course, they would not be in this particular film. That is, again, so one of the things that I'm back projects that I'm kind of always interested in is how often not just students but grown folks feel that media images just are, especially these real documentary kinds of images, like where it just seems like there's a camera and capturing action. And then we're just watching the action being captured. We believe, too many people seem to believe in a kind of transparency. For students here, if you think about some of the debates around Beyonce, feminism or no, one of the things that I consistently wanted to be a part of it, which is tied to this, right, is a part of those debates, is acting
acting as if she's not a phenomenal business person who understands media representations and understands how to give an audience what they want. You don't become Beyonce without understanding that. That takes nothing from her talents as a performer, dancer, singer, like nothing, but to believe that she is giving you unedited access to her life because you can see it, because we read about it in the magazines, because I follow her on Instagram, because she's transparent, is a certain kind of moment that we find ourselves in. And so where people believe that if it seems real, there's all kinds of ways that's seeping in and seeming to start people believing that what I'm seeing is real. So if someone showed up and the image of themselves that they described to the forensic artist, was stunning and gorgeous, it wouldn't have been in here. Right? Like, it doesn't benefit the company. It's not part of the narrative. It's not what they're constructing. They did 3 global studies to be clear what women don't like about themselves, what they don't like about media advertising, and they melded the two and came up with something wildly successful. So it's patriarchy, what patriarchy does with the hiding of real selves, but it's also patriarchy's, twin brother, capitalism, that is also at play around what can be seen. I mean, the whole point here is to sell products, right? Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
I'm a clinical psychologist, and one of the most awkward things that I can ask a woman to do, and adolescent female, is to look at themselves in the mirror. Mm-hmm. I have a mirror in my office, and asking people to look in it is extremely awkward, and many, many women don't like to do that. So in the first ad campaign, what they captured very, very nicely is that moment, that self-hatred that many women in this culture carry. Now, I could talk till I was blue in the face and tell someone, "You're gorgeous. What are you talking about? That's crazy." But what they did was have it represented in an image. Mm-hmm. What they captured very nicely is the problem with hearing that you're beautiful, you are wonderful, you're gorgeous. Mm-hmm. To answer the question or to address the concern about what patriarchy does when the girl looks in the mirror and says, "I am really gorgeous, I have beautiful eyes, I have this, I have that, I love the way I look." For me, when I hear that, I hear mental health. I hear well-being. And the constant ongoing challenge is to help someone who won't even look in the mirror, who has body dysmorphia, to move them to that place.
Right, I mean, think about this. The whole history of advertising is about telling people they need something that they probably don't need, right? Like that's where it really began, to create a need for you. If that's for, instead of a broom, you now need a vacuum cleaner. If that's instead of a VW, you need a SUV. If it's 10 different kinds of odor stamping out products, right? They're convincing you that something you didn't need before, and you certainly didn't want, but that now it has become a need, something you deserve. It's filling a niche in you. There's something that's empty and missing, and all you have to do is step up and purchase this product, and look how that will fix it, which is a part of, I think, the brilliance of this overall campaign for Real Beauty, is that it's aimed at smart women who are media savvy, who get images, they get how to read images, like they know what, I mean, they know the difference between a guilty pleasure and something that's actually substantive. and that they took that group and enlarged their base, the base of people who literally started buying the product. Like, so this has become a phenomena, but it only continues to be funded because it's successful, like worldwide, and they figured out how to do it globally, right? Around the world, they have versions of these ads, sometimes with the same models, sometimes different models. And everyone believes that Dove cares about women in ways that no other, or the advertiser, Dove advertising, cares about women in different kinds of ways. It's brilliant. It really, truly is. I mean, I can see some of the flaws and have some issues and still recognize that they did something here. But it's still, and it's done so well, my point would be sometimes we don't notice that it's still constructed. You know, it's based on something. The end game is buy some products, right? Feel good about Dove.
Thank you for this talk. You said it was pretty much that the ad campaign was universal.
Mm-hmm.
So if it were an Asian ad campaign, how would it differ in the models they would use? Would they use strictly Asian models, or
No.
if it were aimed at Latin America, Latinas?
No.
No, so it would still be
It still
primarily
uses
Eurocentric. I hate to say that because it's trying to be mixed, but the reality of that film that you were showing us was pretty much Eurocentric.
Yeah, so here's the thing. One of the things about beauty, and when I say we know beauty when we see it, like beauty is no longer, or people who study this and who look at what kinds of feelings are evoked by certain kinds of faces and certain kind, what we think of as beauty in a racial kind of context is more ethnically vague than it is one race or another. So again, not to just keep harping on Beyonce. If somebody told you Beyonce was Middle Eastern, you would not recoil in horror. If someone told you she was a Latina, you wouldn't go, what are you thinking? She can't possibly be. If someone told you she was biracial, okay. If someone told you she's Black, that works too. The same thing is true for Jennifer Lopez. For many of our celebrities, our global celebrities, the people who have a sort of worldwide, not all, right, but many, it's a sweet spot. It's an ethnic vagueness that is able to cross ethnic and racial boundaries, either be understood as part of that race or ethnicity, or just celebrated as beautiful because of the mixture. So it's not anymore blonde hair, blue eyed that we consider, people consider as the epitome of beauty. It's a certain, again, ethnic vagueness. And so within that context, those kinds of discourses are they're global. They circulate globally. One of the most popular surgeries in Japan is the one to get the flap removal. One of the most popular products that Ogilvy and Mather markets in Southeast Asia is for vaginal skin lightening or vaginal lightening. Because who knew that your vagina, needed to be lighter? And no, they have, like, if you go on YouTube, like, they have lots of commercials that have been uploaded about, this kind of product. These concerns are global concerns. The specifics of how they sort of play out, again, these folks are brilliant in figuring out, no matter where you go, if they've got a TV and disposable income, probably they got some issues around how they feel about themselves. We can turn them into consumers. So yeah, so in Asia, they look pretty much the same. Like, yeah.
Thank you for your talk. I have so many questions or ideas. I'm gonna try to collapse them all into one simple question.
You got skills.
What would a healthy presentation or idea about Black beauty look like?
Yeah, so there's lots of sort of artists and Black folks have been representing Black beauty since whenever. Black people are not necessarily, anywhere in the diaspora, not necessarily pathological about beauty. right? It depends on who's telling you the story and for what reason. In the Brown v. Board of Education case, of course, the reason is you want to get to strike down this restrictive law, the doll study. So this is where this kind of pathology about Black people and beauty really kind of enters a popular discourse in the U.S. at least. It's at that moment because it's like Black children. Y'all all know this study? You all know what I'm talking about? So as part of the Brown v. Board of Education, we all know that. Right, 1954, striking down. It's the first time the court actually took social scientific evidence into consideration. Before that, they didn't much, like it could be scientific, they were with that, but social science was still a little soft for them in the 1950s. And so for the first time, they allowed a social scientist to sway their opinion, and the social scientists were Kenneth and his wife, Mamie Clark, who did this study where they showed a white doll and a Black doll to numbers of Black students, and a majority of Black students chose the white doll. What happens in the U.S. at that moment, honestly, is there's a kind of relationship of pathology that enters a popular consciousness. It's not that Black people weren't having conversations. You listen to how the blues women talk about different folks. You hear how people played the dozens, how in folklore, right? Black people always had ways of talking about people as cute or ugly or what, but this becomes look, it's out of the closet now. Like we can all see it. And that becomes a kind of predominant way to think about Black subjectivity, because social scientists go into this whole contempt and pity thing. I'm totally off the subject, but one of the primary ways that I think social science overwhelmingly, starting with Du Bois, for those who want to claim him as a social scientist, I claim him as a sociologist. So it is really either this idea of you have contempt or pity for the Negro. And it replays itself out over and over and over. And this moment is really one of the first that it becomes a culturally understood kind of phenomena. So there's all kinds of ways that Black beauty is affirmed. There's all kinds of ways that Black people feel confident and secure and teach that to their kids. There's all kinds of ways that people notice and affirm Black women. They're just not public. Right, what's public is a different kind of narrative. And especially commercial. I'm not sure what kind of money it is in figuring out how Black women talk to each other. What do you want to affirm? I think we should be about done. Is maybe one more question? Is there one more? One? No?
Oh, maybe the last one.
Okay.
This follows up on the last question, but my question for you is, if you were in charge of this ad campaign, how might you have conducted it in such a way that it would be more conscious and ethical?
Yeah, from the very personal perspective, I really am amazed that they have all of these women at different ages. None of them have guts. Right? Like none of them do. Some of them are kind of wider than others, but we're not talking like actual, they don't have flab, right? Some are bigger. And like I said, they don't have cellulite. They're kind of larger. They can all stand around in public and feel some kind of confident in underwear and a bra and laugh and feel good about themselves, right? I think if you're really gonna talk about bursting open beauty standards, you gotta get at what's unattractive, right? Not bigger or smaller versions of what we accept as attractive. If you're really, now I don't know, people feel badly, but nobody wants to see that. Like really, truly, like people don't respond well. I mean, I think part of the reason we got to this big, small, because even some of the people who they're sort of like, and she's fat. Okay, come on. That's like how the plus size models are like a size 10, and they're supposed to be fat, and you're kind of like, but you're just so not. Like you're wearing a 10, maybe an 8. But in a world where 00 is the standard, that you've moved some. In the fashion world where 00 is the standard, you've moved some way. So I don't know, and what I want to keep clear, again, I think that there's all kinds of artists that are representing women in really interesting ways. If you want to go see what a variety of beauty and beautiful women look like, again, they're global, globally. There's lots of people doing that. I would not look to an ad. I would not look to capitalism. I wouldn't look to a product to tell me that I'm good the way that I am, because then this is everybody would be fired. Like, what, you know, we need people to buy things. So you need to feel good about the Dove products that are gonna make you feel soft and smooth, or, but the most sort of ironic thing that really did, they've taken down this website, really was when the bulimics and anorexic took on the website. Like they swamped it, and no one knew what to say back to them, because they were saying, well, how can you say you're for your type of real beauty and deny mine? I think, you know, that I am beautiful as an anorexic. I think that those curves that looks like fat to me, how come you guys get, like, what kind of cultural hegemony is going on here that you're all like, we're for women empowerment as long as they're fat and flabby? And these people on the site, because it was just a chat group, and there had been like peace and love, and, you know, this is so great, and they dissembled, like they did not know what to say back, because the whole point is to accept women as they are, to make women feel good about how they are. If you're going to start labeling and judging, that seemed like a slippery slope. So people were like, well, I don't think it's healthy, so maybe that's the thing. And then you know, people were like, fat's not healthy. Like, you know, we know that that's not healthy. So what? And the website, this went on for about a month, and people literally started to accept the rationale of the anorexics, and they shut down the site. Because people had just started to notice that, well, maybe, because that's the whole basis of the campaign, that you can like be how you are. So then how do you undermine that? So again, in the realm of advertising, I think it pays, you need to pay some attention, because it's an advertising campaign. It's not self-help. Okay, thank y'all.